Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing as well as can be expected in this crazy era we live in where the world's just gone mad. And I hope that something I say today might help you settle down and settle your mind. And I have just been had to give up myself as a hopeless baggage about an hour ago because I couldn't get anything done. And like Cynthia said, I gave up on myself years ago. And I had to ask God to straighten me out. And so I decided that the one thing left that I could do today was come and talk to you. So I'm going to do that. Maybe then I can get myself going and get a few things done on my list today. So today I would like to start out by saying I'm Mrs. Sherman. Welcome to Homemakers Radio. And I hope you get a lot done just while listening. I hope to read to you a little bit today, and I also have a lot of ideas for you and for me too. And so I would like it if you would click the link on the description below on the channel. I don't have any comments here, but you can go and listen to me on the page on which I have posted this. Just click that link, and then you can leave a comment if you like and look at some of the other things that I take pictures of around the manse. And so today I also want you to go and get yourself dressed up to come to class because I'm going to homeschool you, and it won't broke any rebellion. So to get yourself fixed up, but don't just throw clothes on and brush your hair and try to put some thought into it and do as good a job as you possibly can, because that will give you the mood for your day and for other things. Now, I would like to read a scripture to you first, because the subject I'm dealing with is a continuation of the last three episodes where I'm talking about when a homemaker is dealt with sudden stress all of a sudden in her home, and her body and her mind just kind of shut down. And even though she has other people around that she has to take care of or other responsibilities, it kind of makes her only one-sided, like she can't see anything else but this problem, and she just wants things to settle down so she can get back to normal. So I wanted to encourage you to pray, and you can pray your own prayers. You can pray whatever you want. But I wanted to read to you. It says from Ephesians 3, verse 14 and through 20. For this reason I bow my knees before the Father, from whom every family in heavens and on earth is named, that according to the riches of his glory he may grant you to be strengthened with power through his Spirit to your inner being. That's where we're troubled, aren't we, when we have sudden trauma or terror in the home, is our inner being. We don't have a sense of well-being when that happens, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith, that you, being rooted and grounded in love. I talked to you previously about what established means. It means to be rooted and grounded in love. You know, have you ever had an electrician come in and tell you that your plug-ins are not grounded? In these old houses, every now and then you have to have somebody come in and take off the plate and go through and rewire everything and make the wires tighter. And so, you know, it's like when you're plugging in something and it just hangs there. It won't ever kind of grip it well enough, and you can't, and that's supposed to be very dangerous. So every now and then you have to have somebody come in, which I have, and ground it again. And then when you plug it in, it stays plugged in. It doesn't just kind of sag there. So it's grounded, so that you, being rooted and grounded in love. When you're not grounded, you feel like you're flailing about and you've got nothing, no grounding, no establishment, no feeling of being stable. So established means to be stable. And just like that plug, it has to be plugged in and have stability. It can't just hang there. And so we have to have stability. That you, being rooted and grounded in love, may have strength to comprehend with all the saints what is the breadth and length and height and depth, and to know the love of Christ that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled with all the fullness of God. Now here's the most important verse that I like. Now to him who is able to do far more abundantly than all we ask or think, according to the power at work within us. You know, God is a great God, and sometimes we make him so small we don't really think that he can. We hope that things will change. We hope that the person who is walking astray, who has drifted away, or who has troubled the home, we hope that will all settle down. But really, it's better to say that we know that it will, because he is able to exceedingly abundantly, he is able to do far more abundantly than all that we ask or think, according to the power at work within us, and that's him. So keep a prayer on your lips all the time. And this is so important because it will get you through these terrible, terrifying times, even what we're experiencing now in the world. And some of you are getting caught up in this, the recent war. You know, they always have a war, and starting to argue with each other about, and online with each other about what's really going on. I will tell you, it's the opposite of what the media says. And but I don't want to get into explaining it. I have lots of sources. If you'd like some of them, I could send you, and they're quite reassuring. But I want to read to you a quote by Douglas MacArthur. He was General Douglas MacArthur of 1957, and this is what he wrote. And this is what I've always told you, and I've read this to you before. Our government has kept us in a perpetual state of fear. You see, fear and faith can't live together. So the best way to break a people down, to break them down and make them dependent and docile, is to put them in a constant state of fear. And at home, when you have someone who's terrorizing the home, or putting you in a state of, I guess, uncertainty, where you don't know whether they're going to settle down and cooperate with the family, and it could be anybody. It could be your own siblings. It could be your own whatever. You don't have. They keep you in a perpetual state of fear, like he said there, because you don't know what to expect, and you can't really settle down. So let me read this again. Our government has kept us in a perpetual state of fear, kept us in a continuous stampede of patriotic fervor with the cry of grave national emergency. Always there has been some terrible evil to gobble us up, if we did not blindly rally behind it by furnishing the exorbitant sums of money demanded. Yet in retrospect, these disasters never seem to have happened, never seem to have been quite real. Douglas MacArthur, 1957. Well, that's just the story of these traitors and these tyrants. And so let's just settle down now, and we are going to wish that we had made better use of the time, so we could have had something to show for our life during that time. And I think people were thinking, this is just going to be over in a couple of months, and then life will get back to normal. But what we could have done within the home, and what we can still do within the home, we can go on and we can rise above it. We can live above it, and we can do some writing. Write a little. I've got these little cards here. I wanted to show you what I did with them. Well, they're this size and they're blank. This is what I put my notes on. But they're so handy. I get a big packet of them from the store, and you could write a story on it for someone, and just send it, or write a letter on it. They're just so handy, and they've got a little bit of stiffness, not much, but a little bit of stiffness to them. But we could be writing. We could be using our talents. Those of you who love poetry could be writing poetry. We could be sewing. I know not all of you can sew, but for me, I have a page in my notebook. I'll show you my notebook here. This is what my notebook looks like. I have a page in there with a little tab on it for the subject matter, and it's things I would like to sew, just my dreams, just what I'd like to sew. And one of my ambitions and dreams has been, I would like to have only homemade clothing. I'd like to see what it would be like to only have my home sewn clothing, and only have something for every event. Like on Thursday in my home, I have a ladies' fellowship class that's been going on for years. My mother-in-law, I don't think she started it, but it's been going on for 50 years. It's not the same people, and they're not willing to give it up. But I was thinking I would like to have Thursday outfits to wear that I wear on maybe a skirt and blouse that I wear on Thursday, and then my Sunday clothes, and then my Monday clothes, and it all has a mood for me. But that's one of my ambitions. And the other thing is we could learn more about food preparation. We could learn to prepare food in a different way, or cook, or learn something about it to make the food so good and taste so good and feel so good that when we finally went out to a restaurant, it would be inferior. And I know that there's a lot more cooking going on, because whenever I try to register for a class online, a live class online, the seats are all taken. So I know there's a big interest in that. But think of how you could do so much at home, because we got to quit letting everybody do things for us. And before, our social life took place out there. You could shop, you could eat out, you could go on a trip, you could do so much, and it was all for your rest and relaxation and recreation. But we have to start thinking for ourselves and make our own in our own home. And there's so much we could do instead of getting all wrapped up in what's going on. Now, I'm not saying be totally ignorant of what's going on, but I'm telling you, it's quite the opposite of what the major news media says. We could renovate or construct something. We could redo something in our home. We could redecorate. We could clean. We could sort. We could go through all our books. We could engage in creating some art pieces, just your own. Doesn't have to be something that you think is perfect, but just for your own enjoyment. We could engage in music or learning an instrument. We could learn more about gardening and landscapes, and you can get this graph paper where you could graph out or draw out everything you would like to do with your property or with your yard, even if it's a little place. And you can even do that with rearranging your furniture. And this is what we used to do in the olden days. Back on the homestead in the old days, we were pretty isolated, but we would rearrange our furniture in the summer because the sunlight would come in a different way, and we would just move things where it was better. And in the winter, redecorate, and we could learn to sing, we could pray more, and we could engage in self-improvement, and we could walk more and exercise more. And so we could change something in our lives. We could change colors in our house. We could connect with friends and write letters, engage in correspondence and making packages for people. And it's very important if you're under any kind of home stress. If you have been hit with some kind of disaster, you will have to engage in self-care. And that means you have to take care of yourself. There has to be some luxury in your life, whether it's just a cup of tea in a nice cup, or a scented bath, or just having something good to eat. And I thought that it might be nice if you knew somebody who was under stress, or just do this for yourself, to make a kind of a care package for someone who is under stress. Because often someone who's under stress cannot think for themselves. They are just totally blocked out because the stress has gripped them so bad, and they just, I guess, think they want someone to take care of them, or they just want the problem to straighten out and the stress to stop so they can get back to normal. But as I told you in that video I recommended last time, this Dr. Berg, who had done one on why you can't have prolonged stress, you have to have a break from it. While stress is good for you, you have to have a break from it, or it'll start to eat away at your heart and your liver and your kidneys, and you'll have more health problems. So that's why it's so important not to talk about the problem at meal times if you're eating together. A lot of people don't eat together anymore. They kind of like to get off by themselves, I guess, for the peace and quiet. And but not to talk about it in a shared meal, or when you're together at home, not to pollute the whole day with these thoughts. And so I wanted to show you what you could do. Now, first of all, you'll need a container. You can do this for yourself or for someone who you know is in some kind of trauma or stress. And so there are containers. Now, I have a friend that when she wants to do something for someone in a hurry, she takes a paper bag and she rolls down the sides and makes a little basket out of it, and then she lines it with colored tissue paper, and then she puts stuff in it. She'll put her homemade jam in it, and she'll put a blank notebook and a pen and a plant or some food, and take that to someone. It is such a comfort to get one of her baskets, and every time she comes here, she does that for me. I like that better than anything. She'll go to the store and buy an interesting magazine that I haven't seen before, and that is appropriate for my home. And so there are other things too, like an old mailbox that makes a very good container. You know, the ones that the construction workers used to take with them, and that has the rounded top. You could get one of those and fill it up with goodies for someone who just needs a little bit of a break and needs a rest. And then I'll show you what you can put in it. You probably know. You know better than I do. You've probably been at this a lot longer and knew more about it. But then there are other things too. You can use a bowl, a large bowl, as a container. You can use a plastic basket like you get at the Dollar Tree. You can use a metal water pitcher. You can put a lot of things in there. And you could use a tray. I think there are a lot of things I haven't mentioned that you could use as a container that might not cost you anything, or might just cost you $1. You probably got something in your home. And so today I'm just going to show you what I put in a tray, okay? Now, I just did this. I'm not going to give this away, but I just wanted to show you what I did. This was $1.59 at grocery outlet, so I gave her a plant because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 6 blossoms on it. It was much cheaper than 6 roses, and then she'll have a plant to put in her garden. And you can actually keep the primrose in your house. You can actually use them for centerpieces, and you can stick it inside of a different container to make it more attractive. And then the other thing that I did is I found a card that was real cheerful. This says, "Know that you are loved," and my daughter and granddaughter make these cards, and I pay them for it. I support them. And then here's another one that I chose. I always try not to choose one that is overly cheerful. Like, it's bad to sing songs to a troubled heart, so don't send her a card that says life is wonderful if her life is falling apart. So this is one that I thought you'd like to see that they made, and it's from a Stampin' Up catalog company that they are involved in. And so I chose this one too because it's soothing and soft. And then another thing that I put in here was a bar of soap. This is from our local grocery store, and it's an import from Australia, and it's the French pear fragrance. And there are several of these, different kinds, and it's just made from palm oil, water, salt, glycerin, and shea butter. I don't know how they did that, but it's a very nice soap. Not so much junk in it, not so many chemicals. And then I made her some biscuits or scones or bread, and I got these little tiny jars of jam at the English Tea Company online, and I believe it comes out of California. I'm not real sure, but it comes in a box of 12. So these are real handy to give away. And then a package of calming tea, and it has chamomile, hibiscus flower, and orange peel, and rose hip. But you could also just look around and get something that you like, that they might like. It says eases mild tension. And I think a lot of people need to learn how to make tea in a cup. You do not take this bag and stick it in a cup of hot water and just let it sit there, because it'll just turn as... A lot of people that are coffee drinkers do not understand tea. You dip it in until it's a light color, You can still see through it and drink it, and that way that you're not getting such a strong bitter flavor. Tea would always be extremely bitter if you just let that sit in the cup and turn black. You don't do that. It has to be kind of light, very light, a golden color, and that way you don't get the bitter taste. And so sometimes we need to share with people how to make the tea if they don't know. And they'll always say, "Well, I decided I didn't like tea because they took the bag, whatever kind it was, even the nice light strawberry tea, just let it sit there and sit there and sit there, and it's just goopy and too harsh tasting." So then also have a blank book, but you could make this just by sewing some good paper together, just by running it up on the machine on the binding here. And then of course I have the recent Victoria magazine, and what I like about this is there's no bad news in it, and they're a little more careful with their ads. The ads are generally things that the magazine itself offers, not a lot of other. There's not as junky. And this month's is the garden issue, and it is March and April is the garden issue this month. So that is full of brightness and goodness and happiness, and like I'll show you what this is. And you can get this at the grocery store or Walmart, and you can also order it online. But that is something that is so soothing if they can focus at all. Most of the time when people are in distress, they cannot focus on things like this, but it's probably better to give it than not give it. Or why don't you pack up something for yourself and do that? And so I might also, if the distress is of a certain nature, maybe a grown child that has kind of gone off the deep end, and you can't account for their behavior, might include Barbara Johnson's book, So Stick a Geranium in Your Hat and Be Happy. But I probably would cover the cover with a nice piece of scrapbook paper and write a note on it about how this book will make you laugh and save your sanity. So I mentioned all the containers that you could use, but some of you are really smart. You could wrap up something in a fresh, brand new tea towel, dish towel, or something that would be useful. I try not to include things in gifts for people who are under stress that they have to do. I don't want to give them an art kit. I don't want to give them I don't want to give them a soap making kit or anything like that. Just put more obligation on them to do something, but which might be good for them. But I think that you need something that they can be no demands on them. So. Now, from time to time, I like to homeschool you by giving you a little information about one thing or another. And what we tried to do when we were raising our children was give them a chance to know something about as many things as we could, and we knew that not all of it would take hold. They would not be interested in all of it, but they might find something that they like better than something else. So I made sure they had an art course, and I made sure that they had something to do with science and projects and kits and things like that. And I made sure that they had books to read, and also activity books, like I showed you a couple of them, seasonal activity books, things you could do outside and inside, and just to give them an experience and everything. They wouldn't be interested in all of it, but there might be a couple of things that would take hold. It's like some things would create interest, and so that's why when I read to you or I show you things, not all of you are going to like everything, but there might be something that you would benefit from. And so I was going to tell you about how this is how you develop yourself, is you'll try one thing or another and say, "Nah, I don't think I like that." And that's how you improve yourself and develop yourself. And just because you're vital does not mean that you quit learning. And if you're very, very young, I had noticed a couple of decades ago that the very, very young don't want to learn anything, and it could be the faulty way that people are teaching, and the type of education they're subjected to, that this doesn't delight them, and they're not interested. But I think that we can develop interest in people by presenting things in a nice way. Now, if you have a problem and it is terrorizing you, I will tell you something about the mothers. They'll get some miserable comforters. They'll get people who will say, "Oh well, you just expected too much, or you were overprotective," or and they'll put a lot of guilt on you. And the mothers really don't need that, because I notice they automatically think that they just didn't do well enough. I don't know any mother that doesn't think she did. I don't know any mother that thinks she just doesn't have any regrets. They all wish they had done better. So we don't really need that, but expect the miserable comforter and read the book of Job, because it shows you how he stood his ground. And that is something that I wanted to tell you, was to stand your ground. Stay the same, and be convinced that God is going to answer your prayers. I told one lady a few years ago, she asked us to pray for her daughter, and her daughter had gotten into a lifestyle that was so grievous and so sad, and her life was just going downhill, and her mother was afraid for her. And of course, when the children get to be a certain age, the world says, "Oh well, you don't have any control over them because they're of age." But the Bible doesn't give an age limit on caring for our children and loving them and wanting and offering help and protecting them. It doesn't give an age limit on that. That's the government, because then they can start controlling them and getting them to pay taxes. And so stand your ground and stay the same in turmoil. And in any kind of upheaval in your home, stay the same. And then I would say, order something for each of the other children that are home, and tell them how much you appreciate the support they give you by staying alongside of you and living life together with you. Now, one of the things that I read in that book I told you about from back in the 1970s, it was called Widow by Lynn Kane, and I wouldn't recommend it because it doesn't have a Christian theme, but it was the only thing at the time that you could find about widows, and I knew that I needed to know something about what they suffer. And this was the only person I had ever seen that had ever written about it. And some of the things that I picked up on it was that she made two sudden changes, and she sold her home and she moved away, and she had a very hard time adjusting. And she said if she had to do it over again, she would have stayed in the same place a little bit longer and not made sudden changes, because there's going to be enough upheaval with the loss of a loved one. And so she wanted to tell everyone to just give it a little bit more time, and then if you still felt like you wanted to move, to go ahead. And I've heard other widows say that with hobbies. I knew a lady here who had a rubber stamp. She sold a rubber stamp business, and she wanted to sell off all of her rubber stamps and all of her hobbies, all the papers, everything. And someone told her just to wait a year, and if she still wasn't interested in it anymore, go ahead. And she said the year went by and she just still didn't have any interest in it. So she a lot of things we do because we are at ease, and we have a sense of well-being because the people in our family are around us, and we feel more relaxed and calm and able to pursue interests. But sometimes when you lose one of them, your interest just goes dead in something. But she did say not to make sudden decisions the first year. I think this is a good advice for anybody. If you have children at home, tell them not to make major decisions before they're 25 without their parents' help. So stand your ground and stay the same, and try to keep a routine, because that routine will be, maybe if you're just doing it mindlessly, still be something that will keep your sanity. And I did suggest, and I still believe, that walking through the house is very, very valuable, even if it's a small place, because you're moving and it does something different to your mind. Another thing that you will notice when you are in any kind of distress, if someone has suddenly attacked your family in some way, I'm talking about verbally, maybe you've suffered from a verbal attack, and that is that everything begins, you lose your interest in a lot of things and your senses go dull. You can't see things as clearly. I mean, literally, you can't. You look at something, but you don't see it. And then the other thing that someone told me was that everything began to taste like cardboard, which shows that that grief and sorrow and terror can take a lot out of you, and to where you're not functioning like you should. So, also, I mentioned in my last episode that you are talking to the programming of these people when they go off and do something crazy. Like, probably the craziest thing that would ever happen to me would be a room that I can't get straightened out, or something fell and broke and spread stuff all over the place, or because I've been a preacher's wife for so long. The news that someone in somebody else's family had joined a commune or something like that, that would send me just like reeling. And I realized after talking to people that had taken sudden turns in their lives that didn't even make sense, and that I wasn't really talking to them. I was talking to the programming, to the people who had, to the whatever they'd been reading, whatever they had been talked into, and their teachers and people that have programmed their mind. So they're not thinking straight, and we are to feel sorrow for them, because they can't think logically, because their minds are too polluted with wrong thinking. And so someone told me today, she said her husband said, "Let every lie wither and die." So we pray that they will not believe a lie, that they'll be able to recognize the difference between the truth and a lie. And so responding when they create an issue, when they're critical, when they decide to stage a blow up and slam the door, to respond, or responding to false philosophy, like telling the family that they are dysfunctional, or that they should all be like them, and go out and live a wild life. And so it's, we like to be young. We like to appear to be young. We remember our grandparents and our parents, and how authoritative they were, and how they would say things like, "Well, you're young, and that's what young people do, and you'll probably get over it," or something like that. We didn't want to do that, did we? We didn't want to talk to them like that. But I think you can kind of raise your head a little bit and look at them in a wizened way. Raise your eyebrows in a wizened way and say, "Oh, is that right? Is that so?" And show me some proof. Show me, where does it say to do this? You got a book? You got a Bible? You got some kind of instructions for this? Is there a manual that will tell you how to do it? Is there a course I can take that tells me that I should go off and do what you're doing? That's fun. And they don't have a course. They're making it up as they go, and they're speaking out of the blindness in their mind. It's also very important to have your routine and self-care, and have an overly mature kind of matronly attitude, to, instead of feeling shock for what they say, just raise your head a little bit and ask them to write it all down, what they think that you should be doing and they should be doing, and see if it really makes sense. Although I don't know if everybody should do that. But their minds are darkened because their hearts have become hardened, and they have been listening to the wrong voices. Also, I wanted to tell you to listen carefully to what these people that are disturbing or disturbing others are saying, that are just out of line, listen carefully, because they are subtly telling you things, and you might not pick it up if you just say, oh yeah, they said they'd like to do such and such, and you laughed and you thought, oh yeah, sure, and that they're telling you what they're going to do. So listen very carefully to them. They are in us, the people that lash out and that try to destroy your happiness at home and the stability of your family. Another things I would like to say is keep them away from other children in the home, because you don't want them to be influenced by a rebellious spirit. So try to keep them away. If they need to talk to you, you can talk to them on the phone, or you can go out and meet them, but try to keep them away from the home if they are not in compliance with what you believe, peace and quiet and loveliness. And a lot of times you'll find out that these people that are in rebellion, they've quit doing things that are beautiful that they used to like. They quit playing the piano. They quit. They don't sing anymore. They are not laughing anymore. They're not doing their artwork. They're not enjoying going for a walk anymore. They're not. They're just not. They've just kind of left all those things that they enjoy, which shows that their minds have been taken, and so they are in a survival mode right now, and that's one of the reasons they say what they say. They're just living on the surface. They're just shallow, and you are in an escape mode. You just don't want the noise. You don't want the insults. You don't want all that. And so I hope this will be my last episode about turmoil in the home. I don't want everybody to think that when they grow up and get married, they're going to have turmoil in the home. Sadly, we have a lot of it because the world is right there promoting it. You have your media, you have your music, you have your opportunities and the places of work, and people saying, make something of yourself, leave your home and go and do this. And your parents are too narrow-minded, and they encourage people to detach themselves. There's also alcohol and other substances that you think you're reasoning with this child, but you're only reasoning with his alcoholic thinking. And also I wanted to read to you, just to give you a break from this sad subject. I would just encourage you to go ahead and read Barbara Johnson's book, because even though a lot of people, one reason I would cover the cover if I were to give it away, and I'd write something on it about how this is a mind saver, is because it says, so stick a geranium in your hat and be happy. When a person is under this terror, this stress, where their heart has just been gripped in shock and horror at something someone said, or someone who's, even a husband that leaves her and decides he's just going to do what he wants to do, is so horrifying that for them to see, just laugh and be happy on a book, that's not going to work, because that's not going to change what she wants changed, or bring back what she wants bring back. But what we need to do is say, this book is about someone who suffered something very similar as you do, and she learned how to approach it, and how her humor saved her, and how she could connect a lot of it to what the scriptures say. And it also will, everyone that I know that has read it has said that they felt a little more normal afterwards, and they were able to think more clearly about the situation. And so like I said, it's very important that the homemaker keep her dignity by getting dressed and fixing your hair and taking care of yourself, because the other person that's trying to rile everybody up and make them focus on their needs, and also run down the home and say terrible things about the place that has given them so much, they want her to just crack up and fall apart, and send her to the, what was it Barbara Johnson called it, a home for the bewildered. And they want her to fall apart. And I think some of you probably felt like doing it, but don't give them that satisfaction. Okay, now I'm going to read to you At Home with Jane Austen by Kim Wilson. And I just have been moving around in this book. It's not as witty as Brian Kozlowski's book, but I wanted to read to you about it because it's soothing. And here it is, right here. After Jane finished her music practice at 9 o'clock, she made breakfast. That was her part of the household work. Caroline, this is about her life in her own home. Caroline remembered the tea and sugar stores were under her charge. Aunt Cassandra did all the rest. The tea and sugar were locked in the cupboard to the left of the fireplace in the dining room. When the cottage was originally purchased and restoration was under way, the keys to that cupboard could not at first be found. That's interesting. When the cupboard was finally opened, it contained a tea caddy. Now, a caddy is a container that has tea in it. It's not the same as a tea cozy, which is a quilted piece of cloth you put over the teapot. It contained a tea caddy, a pleasant reminder of the Austens' custom of storing their own tea there. Breakfast in the Austens' day would have been a light meal of tea and toast, muffins or rolls. Now, I had read to you the chapter in Brian Kozlowski's book about Jane Austen Eats Bread and what the difference between good bread and bad bread was, and he mentioned that back in the Regency era was when they began to put stuff in the bread, like chalk and other things to make it fluffy and soft and make it rise, and how bad it was for our bodies. I immediately started making my own homemade bread. At first, it wasn't very good, but it was at least more nutritious. And I'm getting a little better at it, but I would suggest you find even if it's just a quick bread, make a bread that's only homemade. And then, because if you get a bag of bread at the grocery store, you look on the side and see the ingredient list. It's that long with teeny tiny print, and those ingredients are very questionable. It has something called datum, which is outlawed in some countries, and it had other ingredients in it that were similar to the bad bread in the Regency time. So when they said breakfast in Austen's day would have been a light meal of tea and toast, muffins or rolls, those muffins and that toast would have been so laden with nutrition compared to today's commercial bread that it was more than just eating carbs. There would have been plenty of protein in it. There would have been just natural good ingredients in it. Cook would have already made the bread and sliced it, and Betsy or Sally would have laid the fire, probably in the dining room, in the iron hob grate, which is the original, and filled the tea kettle with water from the well. Jane's responsibility then would have been to measure out the expensive tea and make it as the family liked it, and to toast the bread over the fire on a toasting fork or a hearth toaster, a rack that held the bread firmly in place. The family could possibly have eaten their meal on a set of special breakfast dishes. Martha Lloyd gave a Wedgwood breakfast set to Mrs. Austen, though this may have been a set intended for one person. Mrs. Austen, who had a tender stomach, preferred her toast dry. But Jane, Cassandra, and Martha would have had butter from Chawton House, honey from their own beehives, and raspberry jam made at the cottage. The dining room window looked directly into the busy road, making the interior of the room highly visible to those passing, as Edward's adopted mother, the kindly Mrs. Knight, reported not long after the Austens had moved into the cottage. I heard of the Chawton party looking very comfortable at breakfast from a gentleman who was traveling by their door in a post-chaise about 10 hours ago. Your account of the whole family gives me the sincerest pleasure, and I beg you will assure them all how I felt much interest in their happiness. Mrs. Austen didn't seem to mind the lack of privacy, said Caroline. There my grandmother often sat for an hour or two in the morning, with her work or her writing, cheered by its sunny aspect and the stirring scene it afforded her. I believe the close vicinity of the road was really no more an evil to her than it was to her grandchildren. That's something. I have a great big picture window, and if anyone's walking by on the farm road or the cars go by, I know they can see in there. But The other day, the postman drove up to give me a little larger bit of mail than usual, and he couldn't get it in the box, so he made a remark, and as he was handing me this stuff, he says, "Oh, I see you're having tea," because there was a teapot in the window, and there had been some people here. And imagine him even saying something about it, and he says, "That's really nice." So if they do see something in your window, make sure it's something that says home and stability and happiness, and give them something to look up to, a standard that they might place their lives on one day. Collier's daily coach was 6 horses, was a sight to see, and most delightful was it to a child to have the awful stillness of night so frequently broken by the noise of passing carriages, which seemed sometimes even to shake the bed. Do you remember an old black and white movie, and I don't know what it was called, it was done in the 1940s, and this family lived so close to the railroad tracks that when a train went by, it shook their little house. Jane derived amusement from the scenes as well, especially the stream of boys passing to and from Winchester College, as she wrote to James Edward. "We saw a countless number of chaises full of boys pass by yesterday morning, full of the future heroes, legislators, fools, and villains." July 9, 1816. "I don't believe Aunt Jane observed any particular method in parceling out her day," Carolyn wrote, "but I think she generally sat in the drawing-room till luncheon, when visitors were there, chiefly at work. She was fond of work, and she was a great adept at overcast and satin stitch. Work, that is, sewing, whether decorative or useful, was a constant occupation for women in Austen's day. Jane and Cassandra had some of their clothing made, but they often made alterations and changed the decorations on their dresses and bonnets, adding and subtracting ribbons and flounces as fashions changed. Jane did a great deal of practical sewing, such as making up items for the poor, making shirts for Edward while visiting Godmersham and Fanny Price, as Fanny Price does for her brother Sam in Mansfield Park. She enjoyed embroidery, often making gifts for her friends and family, some of which have been preserved. Mrs. Austen seems to have taken particular delight in handicrafts, making doll clothes for her granddaughters, knitting gloves and garters as gifts to various family members, and sewing petticoats, pockets, and dressing gowns, and shoes for her granddaughter Anna's trousseau. She also made a handsome quilt, now on display at the cottage, and with her daughter's help. Jane wrote to remind Cassandra to keep an eye out for suitable material. "Have you remembered to collect pieces for the patchwork? We are now at a standstill." May 31, 1811. Now, as I have read to you so far, all these things are extremely ordinary. It's just that someone wrote about it. And even Jane, in her novels, wrote about things that are common to everyone. Even the stress that I've been talking about for the last 3 videos it's not new. And these things have happened in the past. And this is the stuff that people have written of for a long, long time, and it's including in the Bible. So don't think that your little life in your cottage is insignificant, because here we have a picture of the quilt that they're talking about, and it's not professional looking or anything. And you could do that. You could make yourself a little quilt. And it's been said, people under stress, if they sewed 2 squares together per day, just 2 squares, by the end of a month they have the top for a quilt or a blanket. And so we will all wish that instead of fidgeting and feeling at a standstill and letting things slide in our home, we'll all wish that we had spent the time that the government was in such an uproar and wars and things that we can do nothing about. We will all wish that we had improved our lives, that maybe our books were straightened out, or maybe we had done more sewing, or that maybe we could find things, that we are more organized. I would encourage you to read any of Emily Barnes' book. You can find. The Spirit of Loveliness was a good one because she made the point in there that she wanted to be organized so she could find things. And now she's organized. She knows where to find things. She doesn't have to run out and get things all of a sudden. We all want to be like that. But somehow these goals of having a nice place and a peaceful home and prettiness around, somehow, and having a life of happiness and also of intelligence and good thought and reading books and writing books, that somehow it just goes on hold when you have a sudden shock in your life. And that person, you remember the prodigal son in the New Testament? Remember the father watched for him. Yes, he must have been very upset. And of course, it's just a story to illustrate the love of God. But it was common at the time because Christ used illustrations that everyone would have known of at that time and that we know of today. Illustrations to teach a lesson. But the father in this parable is a story, an earthly story with a heaven meaning. The father in this story had been watching for his son. I'm sure he was either looking out of his shop or out of the window, and just like you do, you watch for whoever it was that is not there, and the family's not complete because of that, and that it's been a shock, or maybe they left on bad terms, and it is just so saddening. They watch for them, and they watch for their souls. That's why we care. The world tells us, "Oh, just get over it," but that's not right. And but then he suggested that since the son was coming back, to prepare a big feast. And so he ran out to meet the son. He ran to meet him. He just didn't wait till he came and knocked on the door. He ran out the door, flung the door open, ran out and ran to greet him. I think that's wonderful. That just says, I love you so much. You're so welcome. And so we got to be careful not to get hardened, because sometimes these people are not very nice. And we have to show the better person. I wish I could find the quote from our mutual friend where at the end someone said to this little man, what do you think of a gentleman marrying somebody that's not really refined lady, and she's just an ordinary farmer's daughter or something like that? He said that it doesn't depend on whether or not she's a lady, but whether or not he's a gentleman. And so this doesn't depend on whether or not the prodigal is behaving the way we want him to, but whether or not we are the better person. And if I find that to you, I'll read it to you. I always liked it. So now, these are just ordinary things. It talked about the tea and the tea set and what kind of tea they had and what the box looked like. Look, your life is like that too. Why don't you sit down and write down what the box looks like where you keep your tea, and what the quilt that you're making looks like, or maybe something else that you have, and just describe everything in your room. When I was a little girl, that was something that we liked to do, is to write about everything that was in our room. And the first chapter of Elizabeth Gaskell's book, Wives and Daughters, describes Molly's room. There was a girl, and she was sitting in a room, and in the room was a set of curtains and also a bed, and just describing all these things. But this is the thing that our lives are made of. Jane must necessarily have spent much of her time writing. Caroline, that's why I suggest correspondence as a relief from any kind of severe stress. Caroline remembered that her desk lived in the drawing room. I often saw her writing letters on it, and I believe she wrote much of her novels in the same way, sitting with her family when they were quite alone. James Edward agreed, looking back to his visits at the cottage. There must have been many precious hours of silence, during which the pen was busy at the little mahogany writing desk, while Fanny Price or Emma Woodhouse or Anne Elliot were growing into beauty and interest. I have no doubt that I and my sisters and cousins, in our visit to Chawton, frequently disturbed this mystic process without having any idea of the mischief that we were doing. Certainly, we never should have guessed it by any signs of impatience or irritability of the writer. Well, now that's interesting. She must have just been so unobtrusive about her writing, and looking around, and just kind of no one noticed that she was writing her novels or her books. And so these are just ordinary things, and God put them all in our lives, and these little things are to be noticed and to be appreciated. And so, ladies, I hope that you are doing well today, and I can't think of anything else I need to tell you, but I'm hoping that we'll move on to something else. And I'm saying the three things I'll usually talk about are get yourself your preparation, get ready, because this is your getting dressed and taking care of your appearance. It's actually your armor. And it is reassuring to everyone around you in your home, and also remember to have kind of a confident, mature attitude, so that you don't get thrown with some of the things that people say. And also remember that not everyone is going to help you. You'll find that you have very few people that will understand. A lot of people have been through similar stress, and they just think that that's part of life and that you don't need to worry about it. But if you're a Christian and you've been a homeschooler and you've been a homemaker, those things matter to you, because this was our profession, and this is what we were. We want to see the end of things to end up well, just like the Bible says, as we want. Paul wrote letters to Timothy, and he talked about how he was to grow in the faith, and to show everyone his progress. And so we want the people around us in our families to have progress in their lives, good progress. So, ladies, I hope that you will do well today. And if it's the end of the day, I hope you start your day tomorrow with a greater optimism, knowing that God will answer your prayers. And get that banquet table ready, because someone might be coming home, or you might need it yourself, or to take care of the ones that are with you. And so, ladies, I hope that this has been valuable, and that you got something done, at least, even though it was rambling on. I hope that you got a few things done. And I do appreciate your comments. Thank you for your love and for your prayers. And I hope you'll stay close to Christ. Bye.